Welcome to the Productivity Podcast. Delighted today to be joined by Jason Cotter, who's the Chief Executive Officer at Ole Steen. Hi, Jason. How are you?
Hi, Simon. I'm good. Very looking forward to joining you on your podcast today as well.
Good. No, really appreciate you coming on. I know it's busy in your world, and we'll find out a little bit more in a second what that is and what you're doing currently. But before we get into the detail of kind of current life, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself, your career bio, where you started, where you've been to, and how you ended up at Ole Steen?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. Thanks. So I've been at Ole Steen now for just on 2.5 years, and this was my first gig as a CEO. So you can tell from that my timing's absolutely lousy, because I've spent I think 3 months of normality and then most of the last 2 and a bit years managing through a pandemic. So it's been an interesting transition into the CEO seat. But before that, I spent 10 years with Costa Coffee, so running their UK business for a couple of years, sort of latterly a couple of years running their international business across about 26 markets, mainly franchise, but some owned as well. And then before that, hotels with Travelodge, restaurants with TGI Fridays. But my whole sort of I guess thematically through all of that, I started out in operations on the sales floor with Tesco's back when I was a teenager, and I've stayed in operations for probably 90% of my career. So it's only been the last 5 to 10 years that I came out of operations and started doing broader general management roles. So my passion's very much with people, both team and our customers as well. So I think kind of in a nutshell, that's how I arrived in this seat.
So yeah, strange time to be in the top seat, but if you can manage through a pandemic, then everything else should be plain sailing, right?
So everybody keeps telling me, but yeah, I think the pandemic's been it's been fascinating, hasn't it? Because the way I put it to my team is that there are no right or wrong decisions, because who knows what the right answer is when you're managing in such a period of of the unknown. And for us at Ole Steen, what we've done right from the very first sort of inkling that we had a problem, which actually for us was quite early on, because we've got a pretty substantial business in Copenhagen Airport. We're a Danish company, so we've got a good presence there, and we actually started noticing the downturn as we headed into Christmas and January of sort of Christmas of 19 and January of 20, because we saw passenger numbers starting to decline. But beyond that point, the thing that we've done is just sort of look to our values as an organisation and as people, and sort of make our decisions back against that, because that has stayed a fixed point in a very ambiguous world. I think looking to your values as an organisation and to sort of how you see yourself as a leader has been the sort of the lodestone for how we've thought about running the business over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think lots of businesses out there, their core values have shone through, haven't they? Whether that's what they believe they were or they've played out absolutely to the letter. It's been an interesting time to see those true brand values play out in regards to customers and colleagues.
Yeah, and I think that for those of us that have come through it in a positive way, and clearly we're not out of it yet, because as we head into yet another bout of it, I think if you survive this, then you're likely to survive anything, because I think you've been pretty much tested, haven't you, in terms of those values and whether or not you can hold true to them.
Absolutely. So for those that might not be familiar with Ole Steen, and I don't mean that disrespectfully, because you're growing in the UK and kind of south upwards, give us a bit of background about what you guys do, what you stand for, what people can expect when they come and visit some of the amazing stores that you've got.
Yeah, thanks. So the organisation, we're celebrating our 30th birthday this year. So 30 years ago, two amazing bakers, Ole and Steen, brought their businesses together and founded a truly outstanding organisation in Denmark. And in Denmark, we're called Laukehusel, which is a bit of a mouthful for a British speaker. So unsurprisingly, when we came to the UK, we became Ole Steen and named after our founders. Yeah, they founded a business in Denmark 30 years ago as bakers, producing some truly outstanding products, both in confectionery and in cake and in bread. And they grew that business steadily over the course of the next sort of 10 or 15 years. In the early 2000s, they took in some private equity money and really accelerated growth in Denmark. In 2017, we came to the UK and opened the first store in the UK in St James's, and then started to grow from there. And then in 2019, we opened the first store in New York. So today we're at more than 105 bakeries in Denmark, 16 in London, and 3 in New York. And we are a baker. So, you know, what we get very excited about is the quality of the baked goods that we produce. So truly amazing range of breads, cakes, and confectionery. And then in our international markets, very much a cafe business as well. So a significant part of our business would also be coffee and lunch and the like. But we're a business that was, you know, has taken real sort of value-driven thinking around the quality of ingredients we use, the simplicity of the processes we use. Everything we sell, we make, and typically during the night as you consume it on the following day. And we've stayed true to that. So that's true in Denmark, in London, and in New York. We make everything ourselves, and we make it with the simplest ingredients of the best quality that we can find. We've got hundreds of bakers and confectioners that work for us to produce those products, and then obviously we deliver them out to stores and across Denmark, London, and New York. So it's really a product-led and founded organisation in the first instance. But then I think what we've added to it is some truly amazing and very cool Danish design. So we invest a lot of money in the stores that we build. They're beautiful. There's a lot of marble and a lot of polished brass and a lot of beautiful, simple Scandinavian Danish design. And then we like to think we sort of bring that Danish service ethos, which, if you're lucky enough to have been to Denmark, Danes are very hospitable, very smiley, real service culture around their sort of hospitality businesses. And that's what we've then tried to transplant into London and into New York. So that is a short history of us.
And you talked there about kind of some unique points in terms of cradle to grave. So you kind of make it simple ingredients, ship that into the stores, and then consumers get to see it. And again, for anybody who's not been to a store, find your closest one and go and take a look, because amazing cakes. How can it speak from experience? Cinnamon socials is one of the things on my list every time I go now. Toasties, coffees. You've now got the app as well, haven't you, where you can start to build some loyalty points and get free bread, get free cakes, get free toasties and drinks as you kind of make your visits more regularly. So when you kind of landed, and you have grown quite substantially certainly in that kind of M25 corridor in central London, what's the kind of feedback from customers you've been getting? Because it is a different proposition to Costa, to Nero, to Starbucks. So people may see it fits in that mold, but when you experience it, it's very different.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, I have a deep and undying love for Costa, having spent 10 years there. But I really understand that business, and yeah, you're right. We're not a coffee shop. We're definitely a baker, and I think the why I sort of draw that difference is the thing that we get passionate about, excited about, is the quality and the breadth of products that we bring to the market. The fact that you then choose to consume them, you know, in our lovely environment and with a coffee is slightly secondary to the product in the first place. So I think that's the fundamental difference for us. Even though, you know, to the average consumer, and clearly we'll happily serve anybody. I think that people, more so in the UK and New York, use us in the same way as they might use one of those other players. But I think that what we bring is just a much bigger breadth of range and a real sort of quality premium note to everything we do, be that design or product or service or locations and what have you. So I think that's probably the the key difference in terms of how we see ourselves versus how the customer might choose to use us.
I think for me, that rang home when our team went out to Denmark to do some work there for you guys, and they came back and said, "You'll never believe the drive-throughs. People go through ordering bread. Nobody orders a coffee in the drive-through. They order some bread, they get it sliced, and off they go."
That's absolutely true. So, and I think that you do see it much more clearly in our home market here in Denmark, where we are, to all intents and purposes, a retail baker for the most part. So people come to us daily or every other day to buy their pastries, to buy their fresh bread, and that's very much how they use us. Denmark's a very bread culture. Bread is truly the hero, very celebrated here, and the sort of consumption of bread and cakes and the like is much higher than sort of typical on average for the UK. But I guess we're trying to bring that quality and that, I guess, convincing consumers that that paying a premium price for bread when it's well made with great ingredients is a price worth paying, as different to all the other ways that particularly British people consume bread, which is for the most part from supermarkets.
Yeah, and once you've tasted that higher quality product, then you really notice the difference when you go back, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely. And I know, you and I have had this conversation at the time we've known each other, Simon. I think that we often say that bread only needs 4 ingredients: flour, salt, yeast and water, or sourdough starter and water. So when you pick up a loaf of bread in the supermarket and turn it over, bread in the supermarket has a lot more than 4 ingredients, and you should just ask yourself why. What's it doing there? What's the purpose of all those other ingredients in a loaf of bread? And that's the way we sort of think about bread particularly, and clearly rye bread, which is not massively popular in the UK, more because UK people, the UK consumer is not exposed to it, but that's a very significant part of what we sell in Denmark. But it takes us nearly 3 days to make a loaf of rye bread because of how long we combine the ingredients for, how long we let them mature, and then the care we take over the process. And we think that then pays you back in the quality of the product that you get at the end of it. But you should always ask yourself the question: when you put a loaf of bread in the bread bin at home on day 1, and you can still eat it on day 7, there's a reason you can still eat it on day 7. My bread will not last 7 days. It will be amazing on day 1 and great on day 2 and fabulous for toast on day 3. And after that, it shouldn't be around. You should buy another loaf, because that's about the quality of the ingredient that's in it, and it's about the ingredients that are not in it as well. No,
absolutely wise words. So, what can people expect in the UK from Ole Steen in terms of growth plans? Are we going to see more of you across the country? Is it going to be gradual? Is it going to be really quick?
Yeah, so I think in totality, 2022 will be our highest growth year in our history. So we'll open more stores this year than any year in our history, across all 3 markets. But the biggest number will open in the UK. So we'll open somewhere between, probably 10 and 13 stores this year in the UK, but mainly, totally inside the M25 or the sort of broader M25 corridor, if you will. And that's primarily to do with the fact that we make and bake our products very locally to where we sell them, and we don't believe in transporting products over very long distances where we can avoid it, because I think it damages the product quality. So if we decide to go further north, and I'm sure we will at some point, then we also have to bear in mind where will we build our next bakery in order to be able to supply those stores. So big growth plans, but we think we can do it within that sort of M25 corridor for at least the next couple of years before we have to think about pushing a bit further out.
And you talked there about the challenges as you move, let's call it up north. You've then clearly got to have this bakery or a number of bakeries to service the product in the way that you want it to get there from a quality and freshness point of view. From landing a new brand in the UK and then growing that, what other challenges have you seen?
I think actually, in fairness, we were less sure about what we were when we arrived in the UK. So I think we were trying to be all things to all people. And what we've done over the last couple of years is just get really focused on being a great baker. So, we see our purpose as creating a better bakery for all. And it's taken us, words are simple, but words are powerful. And it's taken us a long time to get to that, very clear purpose as an organization. So I think that, I guess what we've learned in coming here has been get very clear about what you are and what you're not. And then that really helps you with your decision-making process. And then I think the other thing, as always with landing a new brand in a new country is then driving awareness and getting customers to understand who you are and what you're for. And then I guess for me, the final point would be one around price point and being in the sort of premium end of the market, is that you do have to do a certain amount of convincing the consumer why it's worth paying more for something. And I think that, we're not the only player in this space. Clearly, there are other great artisan bakers in the UK. But I think that the education or the allowing people to become more educated about bread and quality, I think is a sort of longer term journey that we're still on. But I think people are facing into it, and I actually think in that respect, as we know, COVID and lockdowns have been pretty helpful, because you had a whole load of people piling into making their own sourdough and making their own breads and cakes at home, which is, we think that's fantastic, because you won't always have the time to do that. And if you haven't got time to do that, then, come and buy it from us, and we'll be very happy to provide it. And then at that point, quite how labor intensive and quality intensive making those kind of products are.
Yeah, I've got my sourdough starter in the fridge, which is, I don't know if it's the first one we did, because you kind of take a bit off, don't you, every time you make a loaf. But yeah, we did that in lockdown, and I think the first one we used, is it apple to
start it off.
To start it, and then the next one we did, we left it outside, because you can use kind of the fresh air, can't you, to start it off as well. But yeah, again, once you start to do it yourself, you understand how difficult it is. I've still not mastered getting the cut on the top, so it kind of balloons nicely in the oven. Mine will look at slightly strange shapes and textures. But yeah, it is an art. It absolutely is, when you start to try yourself, because it's really difficult to replicate anything close to what you'd buy in one of the shops.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really interesting. I've been in one of our bakeries this morning in Copenhagen, just on the edge of Copenhagen, and watching the guys and girls in the confectionery making our Christmas products. So Danes have a massive Christmas tradition around particular products. And we have a particular product called kransekage, which is effectively a very marzipan heavy cake that comes in 6 sort of concentric rings that we stack on top of each other, and then with a little cap on the top of it. So it's kind of like a Christmas tree shape. But each ring is individually iced. And we are making tens of thousands of them at the moment, by hand. And I think that when you watch the teams and just quite how skilled they are at producing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these products, iced by each one individually, iced by hand, then you realize it just reminds me what an amazing business this is. I get this, that warm fuzzy feeling about the sort of real integrity of us as an organization in how we handcraft all of these products, and just letting customers know that that's the story of the product, and that's why why it will taste amazing and why you'll be really pleased with it, but also why it deserves the price premium that some of our products have, because it's truly handcrafted, handmade, and pretty special.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, if one thing lockdown's taught us, it's about handmade, local, artisan, time and effort and care and attention, rather than potentially mass produced.
Yeah, very much so.
And I just want to touch, before we close, on kind of sustainability and food waste. Certainly in the UK, and I'm assuming it's the same around the world, sustainability probably second on the agenda to COVID. And once COVID dies off or calms down, I'm sure it'll become top again. And food waste really topical. Where as an organisation are your thoughts around that, and what kind of things are you thinking about as we move forward? Everyone seems to have a 2030 target in this type of area.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, if we've sort of set out a broader sort of ESG agenda, if you will, which covers food waste, diversity and inclusion, and sort of packaging and those sort of secondary sort of usage products. We published for the first time in our annual report in May of this year. So that was the first time we'd sort of gone public with where our focus was, and setting ourselves some targets that we would then come back and report on each year in our annual report. So it's very close to our hearts, and we've really made some moves forward on it this year. I think that the food waste is a logical one for us, because clearly we're a fresh food business. Nothing that we make has more than one day's life. So if we get it wrong, it's going in the bin. And clearly that's not great from a sustainability perspective. So what we've really set out to do is to tackle that in a number of ways. So we've set ourselves a target that 95% of the raw materials we take into the business get used in some constructive way, and I'll define what get used is. So obviously in the first instance we want to make them and for customers to buy them and go home and enjoy them. That's clearly number one. Number two, because we're a baker, then there is quite a large percentage of the products that we don't use that we take back into production and reprocess them into something else. So some of our bread goes back into our sourdough and back into our rye breads to become part of the starter for the next round. We use a lot of our pastries back into some of the cakes that we then make the following day. So these are very sort of generationally tried and tested things that bakers do in order to make sure that we don't waste anything. We use Too Good To Go. So we've got a partnership across all three markets with Too Good To Go to provide a discounted bag of our products at the end of the day to customers who sign up to the app. So that's been really successful for us and great for our customers in terms of accessing another sector of the market. And then whatever gets back to that we take back in as part of waste, we then send to bioethanol processing. So between a combination of get the order right in the first place, and we've invested heavily in that, reusing products, Too Good To Go, and bioethanol, then we're approaching north of 90% of everything that we bring in, we use, and it gets used constructively. So we're pushing hard on food waste because we think it's clearly something that customers can care about. It's something that we care about, and we've made some really good progress on it. So I think that's probably the one that we made the biggest progress on. The one that we're adding to your 2030 question, Simon, is that we hadn't had anything about our sort of carbon footprint and sort of decarbonising our business, and that's clearly very topical with COP26 and the like. So we're currently looking now at taking the first step in that, in terms of establishing what our current carbon footprint is, and then from there setting science-based targets, and then ultimately the ambition to become carbon neutral at some point. But I haven't. It's been a big internal conversation as to what we should say publicly about that, and we're not sure yet, other than we're doing the legwork so that we can make a decision and make some sort of statement about it in the near future.
Amazing. I mean, it's good to hear that there's some really clear plans and the other stuff that you're thinking about and taking it seriously. So amazing. And ironically, Too Good To Go are going to be on one of the future episodes of the podcast. So great. We've worked with them in a couple of organisations, so they'll be on to share their message, which clearly is helping everybody reach their targets in the future.
Definitely.
Jason, final question from me then. What's the best bit of business advice you've ever been given?
you could have queued me up for this one, Simon.
No one gets queued. It's off the cuff, this one.
I think it's probably in the people space, and it's about that taking a chance on people, because I think that I've been lucky enough in my career to have had 2 or 3 people in my career that have had a real fundamental impact on me, but it's been primarily because they've believed in me and taken a chance on me. So I think that's probably the single best thing that I've learned along the way, is that when you see somebody with a bit of spark and a bit of drive, then take a chance, because the chances are it will pay you back.
No, that's really good. That's really good. Listen, it's been a pleasure to catch up as always. I love our chats. We go into all sorts of detail on random things, but I think this one's been really good. And I would encourage anybody listening who's not been to Ole Steen, the next time you're in London, check them out. Absolutely guarantee you won't be disappointed. Have a cake, have a panini, have a coffee, whatever takes your fancy. But if nothing else, just go and have a look because the stores look beautiful. The teams are great that we've worked with over the last couple of years, and the product's brilliant. So that's my closing sentiment. Other than thanks for coming on again, Jason. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks very much, Simon. Really appreciate it. Speak soon.
Take care.
Take care.